is arguably no more important plan B than voting with your feet. And I just had the pleasure of meeting our next speaker, Alexandra Cross, and she's going to tell you about just that. Plan B, having a Plan B in El Salvador with Good Life El Salvador. Alexandra Cross. Let's hear it.
This is working. Okay, great. And the... Hi everyone, so I'm Lexi, and I'm here from El Salvador. I'm obviously not Salvadorian, I moved there 5 years ago, but I'm super excited to be here. I actually have never spoken at a Bitcoin conference, and I don't do much public speaking, so this is my first time. But thank you to the organizers of Plan B and everybody for having me. It's such a beautiful place. It's almost as beautiful as El Salvador. I'm here to talk about real estate and Bitcoin and why El Salvador is becoming a Plan B for many of our clients. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys a video that I actually put together specifically for this talk, featuring a few local entrepreneurs in El Salvador and some expats talking about why they're investing. So you guys can play it.
That's actually the easiest question that you've asked.
Well, a quick answer to that would be why not? Everyone in the world is watching El Salvador do things differently.
It's just every day there's more opportunity than there was the day before.
Everything's sort of improving, let's say.
I would love to see more investors supporting my country.
The security of the investment would be the main reason to do it.
There is just nothing but opportunity here.
They're embracing technology. They're trying to put laws in place that are very business friendly.
And it's safe now, okay?
You have like a market that is willing to take those products and services.
At least for now, there's no property tax.
It's a place to raise a family because the value system here, it's the old days, you know, for me.
It's a really interesting place to invest for people who own a lot of Bitcoin, actually.
So yeah, as you can see, there's a lot of excitement. People are super excited about what's happening in El Salvador, both expats that are moving there, but also people, local entrepreneurs from El Salvador. A little bit of context. Our company is Good Life El Salvador. It's not going to be a sales pitch for our company, I promise, but we are a real estate consultancy based in El Zonte, as many people know, Bitcoin Beach. And I think it's important to have an understanding of our founders. So of course it's me. I'm originally from Seattle, Washington, but like I said, I moved to El Salvador 5 years ago. And my co-founder is Roman Chimbera. A lot of you guys know him. He's very involved with the Bitcoin circular economy in El Zonte. And he's somewhere in the crowd here. So together we have a really unique perspective about what's happening in El Salvador. Somebody who grew up in El Zonte and has seen the country transform over the last 30 years. And then myself with somebody who has more of a North American perspective. We get to interact with a lot of people who are excited about El Salvador. And so, yeah, let's talk about the evolution of Bitcoin country. I like to call it the little country that could. I have a son now, and so I always think in children's books, and I don't know if you guys know The Little Engine That Could, but I think of El Salvador that way. So to start, in 1980 to 1992, you have the Civil War period in El Salvador, followed by the late 1990s and the early 2000s, where El Salvador was known as the murder capital of the world. You had a lot of gang violence, an entire new wave of violence in the country that was mainly started when the United States was deporting Salvadorians back to El Salvador. So the gang crisis really originated in the United States. And then in 2019, you have Nayib Bukele starts his presidency, and he's recently been reelected. So now we really see a new future for El Salvador. What do we see now in the country? A reduction in gang violence, or really an elimination of gang violence now in El Salvador. We also have Bitcoin adoption, which is widespread, contrary to, I think, what the media portrays. Infrastructure development, including tourism projects. There's Surf City 1 and Surf City 2, both major projects that the government have put into place. We have international surf competitions coming to El Salvador multiple times a year. There's economic incentives as well, encouraging companies to come and build in El Salvador. A few of those initiatives, we have the zero tax law for tech companies coming to El Salvador, and we also have a recent law that was passed for any developers that are looking to build buildings 35 stories or higher. They get tax income incentives as well. So all of this is leading to massive public support from around the globe. El Salvador is the smallest country in Central America, showing and proving that countries really can change and attract people from all over the world looking for freedom and hope. I mean, I have calls with clients all week that are coming from New Zealand or Australia or the US or Canada looking for a plan B. So exactly who's looking to invest? Of course, we have Bitcoiners. We have foreign investors now coming to the country, entrepreneurs, many of which are also Bitcoiners, surfers and outdoor enthusiasts, and then the Salvadorian diaspora. That's huge. I mean, El Salvador is roughly 6 million people in population, with 2 million El Salvadorians living in the US. So you have a huge wave of first and second generation Salvadorians looking to move back to the country. All of these individuals or groups are interested in a plan B. We have a client that recently purchased a property, I think over about 100 acres, 45 minutes from El Zonte, just for a plan B, right? He lives in the Cayman Islands and he's thinking forward, like if anything happens to him, he wants to have a place that he can go. And so we have a lot of clients in this position. We also have clients coming, relocating their entire families. And you know, people used to leave El Salvador and go to the US. Now we have people in the US who are selling their assets and actually moving, enrolling their kids in school. We have a client from France selling everything that they own and moving to El Salvador, right? They're purchasing a property near the beach and a property in the city. So it's pretty remarkable to see. That takes a lot of effort to uproot your family. We also have clients who are just simply looking to diversify their assets. So it's an economic play, but seeing real estate as something that's more secure for them. We have people looking for safety, security, and a healthy lifestyle. I don't know if anybody follows Dr. Jack Cruz, who moved to El Salvador, but really talks about being in the sun and spending more time outdoors. So we have people like that looking for warm weather all year. We have clients who are starting or moving their businesses. We also have clients just simply wanting to invest in property because they want to support the movement and Bitcoin adoption. And then, of course, freedom is probably like the number one reason I get from clients. I'm looking for a freer place to live. So why is real estate an attractive first step in El Salvador? Affordability and growth potential. So if you look at El Salvador and how it positions next to other countries like the US, if you look at Miami or Malibu, you're gonna see outrageous real estate prices for oceanfront homes. So while El Salvador's prices have definitely risen in the last 5 years, you still see a lot of growth potential and much more affordable prices. So we have a project, just to give you an idea of prices, we have a project in El Zonte, a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom home, a condominium, and it's ocean facing and it's around $775,000. So yes, that's more expensive than it was 5 years ago, but still, when you compare it to other parts of the world, affordable. You have government-driven tourism growth. The country is safe and secure as well now, which wasn't something that was the case in the past. You have increasing infrastructure development. So if you come to El Salvador, actually, how many people have been to El Salvador? If you could raise your hand. Actually, that's a fair amount. So if you've been there, especially in the last year, you would have seen a lot of the changes that have happened with infrastructure in El Zonte specifically, like they repaved all of the roads. So you see, obviously an increase in the infrastructure development helps bring more tourism. Rental income opportunities, we have people looking for vacation homes, and also there's no property tax. So that's a huge one. You can come to El Salvador, you can buy real estate, and you won't pay any property taxes. There are some other taxes, but property tax, annual property tax, that does not exist. Foreigners can buy property and their name is on the title. That's also something different than, for example, in Mexico, you have a 100-year lease, but in El Salvador, if you come as a foreigner, all you need is your tax ID and your passport, and you can purchase property in the country, which makes it very accessible for people from around the world. And of course, Bitcoin adoption. So yes, we have Bitcoiners buying property with Bitcoin. This is not a joke. Like, people are really coming and they're buying property with a QR code. Like, it blew my mind the first time that I saw this happen. So Bitcoiners are coming and purchasing with Bitcoin. I wanted to talk a little bit about how Bitcoin is being used to purchase real estate in El Salvador. So there's two different ways that you can do it. The first is very, very simple and straightforward. The buyer wants to pay in Bitcoin and the seller wants to receive in Bitcoin. So you have very straightforward wallet-to-wallet transaction. And when this happens, it's amazing because it's very simple, and it supports adoption. So we love this kind of transaction. The second form would be that the buyer wants to pay in Bitcoin and the seller wants to receive US dollars, this is probably more often than not what we see, because a lot of times the sellers are Salvadorian, maybe they're older and they just really don't understand how Bitcoin works or really what Bitcoin is. And so there's a lot of third-party intermediaries, strategic partners of ours, like we have Sat Street, Ebex, like some of these companies that help facilitate these transactions. How it works is, it's also pretty simple. There's the buyer, they send Bitcoin to the intermediary, and then that intermediary is able to deposit US dollars into the seller's account. So two different ways to make a Bitcoin transaction possible, but it's always possible to pay in Bitcoin. Okay, why is Bitcoin better? It's crazy because we've had many clients who have tried to pay with international wire transfer. For example, we had a client in Holland and they wanted to pay with US dollar via international wire transfer, and it was nearly impossible. It took weeks for them to actually figure that out, to the point where we were like, guys, you have to just buy Bitcoin and then send the Bitcoin, because it's much easier. So it's faster and cheaper. You have much more simple cross-border transactions and easier access for international buyers. You really don't need traditional banking or a local bank account to make it possible. Yeah, the traditional way. So traditionally, international wire transfers, which we definitely still do for non-Bitcoin buyers, and then certified checks. Like, that was a wild one for me. Like, I want a check. I want them to pay with a check when I sell my property. But that requires a local bank account. And so with Bitcoin, obviously, we don't need to do that. And the local bank accounts, believe me, if you've tried to do it, it takes a really long time to get those set up, and a lot of paperwork. So if you can avoid it, it's nice to avoid opening up a bank account in El Salvador. So in summary, Bitcoin's role in real estate, especially in a country like El Salvador, where it is legally accepted, creates new opportunities for investors who are tech savvy, international buyers looking for seamless transactions, and those wanting to diversify into property with Bitcoin. So I wanted to share with you guys a few examples, real-life examples of where Bitcoin is being accepted and the different developments that are popping up in El Zonte specifically, but it is happening across the country at large. Wave House is a 19-unit oceanfront condominium project in El Zonte. If you've been to El Salvador, if you've been to El Zonte, it's in between Palo Verde Hotel and Puro Surf. So this one we actually just closed, and the project just finished, but it was about 2 years of construction, and it was a pre-sale project. So we pre-sold units, and I would say about 30% of the transactions were in Bitcoin, and that was 2 years ago. We were selling properties using Bitcoin. So this is really the first development of its kind in El Salvador, with luxury finishes that really caters to somebody from North America with that kind of expectations of living. And yeah, a Bitcoin project. We also have this is a newer project that's actually currently under construction, and it's slated for a 2025 completion date. But this is Barefoot and Zonset. It's two different properties. One is oceanfront and one is second line from the beach. But it's a total of 60+ plus condominium units in El Zonte, and this was very Bitcoin friendly. We had probably 50% of our buyers actually paid in Bitcoin, and we were receiving down payments through QR code. So we would just send the QR code to the buyer. They could be located in Europe or wherever, and they could send the payment for the unit. And it was, I don't know, it's just, when you see this happen, it really blows your mind. So really exciting to see these kinds of projects. And obviously, you know, when you see new development projects, it really indicates the country's trajectory for growth. So we're seeing more and more projects, creating jobs. I mean, obviously development brings good and bad, right? But we're really seeing more jobs created. We're seeing it stimulate industries like construction and service. There's need for new restaurants, new service industry that basically gives a lot of options for local entrepreneurs, right, to start their own companies, start their own restaurants, and cater to the clients that are buying in these projects. It also encourages the government to invest in local infrastructure projects, like I was talking about in El Zonte, repaving all of the roads. If the government sees that there's demand in certain areas, they're going to do their best to make sure that they're improving the infrastructure in those towns. And then attracting foreign investment and rising standards of living. So Chimbera and I always say that the future is really real estate, investing in real estate in El Salvador specifically, and Bitcoin. I think it was Max Kaiser that said buying into real estate in El Salvador now is like buying Bitcoin, you know, back in the day in the early stages. So this is how we see it. And I really think El Salvador's use of Bitcoin for real estate transactions specifically is setting a precedent for adoption worldwide. I mean, once you see how easy it is to facilitate a transaction, you could see other developments taking that to their countries and putting it into use. So in summary, El Salvador, we really see El Salvador, it's the land of opportunity. I mean, people are coming from all over the world and they're seeing El Salvador as a place of hope, place of opportunity. They're nervous about what's happening in Canada or the US or Europe, and they're really seeing El Salvador as, like I said, their plan B. We see investors coming from all over the world, new projects and developments, and Bitcoin really is being used to buy property in El Salvador. Okay, so one of the things, we have a lot of people that reach out to us and say, I'm really interested in what's happening in El Salvador, but I don't really know where to start. And so I will give us a shameless plug here at the end. But we always say, like, come to El Salvador and experience it for yourself. That's the first step in really understanding how to invest your money, how to invest in real estate, what's the legal framework like, what's the real estate market like, you know, how do people live? So we encourage you to come and stay there before you actually buy any property. We have created something that we're calling our Discovery Trips, and so it's for the El Salvador curious, people who want to come and learn more about what's happening in the country. We offer 5 days all-inclusive stay, meetings with lawyers, architects, just to give you a sense of really what's happening on the ground there so you feel more confident in making investment decisions in the future. So this is something new that we've launched just to make sure that we're meeting the demand and the needs of our clients. If you want more information, you can scan this QR code, send us your information, and we'll get back to you. But I do think this is really valuable if you have, you know, if you're looking for a plan B, if you're really curious about moving to El Salvador. I think it's really critical, really, that you understand, you know, how the country is operating before you invest. Okay. And then I'm just going to leave you with a video of me, and then afterwards, if there's time, I actually don't know what time it is, but I can open it up for questions. Okay, perfect. So yeah, you can play the video.
People are really excited about what's happening in El Salvador. There are so many individuals who've never been here, but they're interested in El Salvador as a plan B, or they want to relocate their family or invest in a vacation property, but they just don't know where to start. So this trip was created specifically for this reason, to give individuals the know-how and the connections and the resources they need to make the right investment decisions here. The point is not that you walk away investing in a property, although that would be great. The point is that you walk away with the confidence that you need to take those next steps in El Salvador. We really want to set you up for success.
Okay, so that's my presentation. 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 So that's my presentation.
Check, check.
Yeah, we
Yep.
can take some questions, and I
Awesome,
might call
thank you.
Chimbera up to answer
We
as
got
well.
one? Okay, here we go.
It was a great speech. Thank you. How is it about the living permit in El Salvador?
I'm sorry, the living
Permit? The permit?
Oh,
the
to live-
permission to live there?
Yeah. So in El Salvador, there's different ways that you can get residency. There's a lot of different ways that you can do residency. You can become you can open up a company and you can be the legal representative of that company. You can open up a company and invest a certain amount of money into the company. There's ways to get residency as a digital nomad, or obviously if you're working for a Salvadorian company, or you marry somebody from El Salvador. So there's many different ways to get residency. No, you do not automatically get residency if you purchase real estate. There was a few years back, the president Nayib Bukele, he did mention something about investing 3 Bitcoin and that you would automatically get residency in the country, and we never quite saw that play out exactly that way. There is the Freedom Visa. I don't know if you've heard of this. It's also not real estate related, but if you donate $1 million in Bitcoin to El Salvador, then you will automatically get citizenship. But no, unfortunately, purchasing real estate directly, it doesn't get you citizenship or residency, but it's not hard to get residency.
Got any other questions? Here we go.
Hello, I'm from Guatemala, and I have a question. What happened if Bukele is not? What happened after Bukele finished his period, and the new president can change the laws?
It's a question that we get a lot. It's a very good question. I think actually you would be great at answering this. I will say, I think so many systems foundationally have been changing that even when Bukele is no longer president, they will continue on. He's rocked the country. It's a different place than it was 5 years ago. So I don't think it will be easy to change what he's started. But maybe you wanna...
No, I think it's a great question. And like Lexi mentioned it, I think if you don't know your rights, you will not ask for it. If you don't know you can have better things, you will not ask for it. But I think President Bukele put the standard really high, so that it doesn't matter who is coming after him, like Lexi say, it's not gonna be a way that we will accepting something less than that, So we're super confident on the process, and and I always say you can always come back, but if you feel it, this is the right things to do now, you have to do it now, We don't know in the futures. Europe used to be really nice back in the years, and look at now. The USA looked to be the best place to be, and now people are looking for a plan B. So things can change, of course, but El Salvador definitely is moving in the direction that we all feel exciting and we all want to be part of it.
Yeah, trajectory is important to consider as well. Yeah. Do we have another question? Because I have one for her if nobody's up. All right, nobody's up. So I'm curious, actually, and you may have covered this, I had to step out for a minute, but you said you went to El Salvador first 5 years ago. What was the biggest, kind of day-to-day transition that you hadn't expected or that was difficult to live life in a new place?
Yeah, it's a good question. I could talk about that for a long time. I think one of the things for me, I lived in New York City actually before I moved to El Salvador. So it was a big change because I moved to a small surfing town. So I would say one thing is you don't have all of the access to things that especially in New York City, I could walk downstairs and I had access to anything that I needed access to. And in El Salvador, it wasn't the same. You can't get Amazon packages. I mean, there's just some simple things that are nice to have. That being said, I feel like it was totally worth it because I realized that actually I didn't need all that stuff. that I had access to. I just didn't need it. And I was focused more on living outside and like waking up with the sunrise and going to bed with the sunset. So I think there's a trade-off, but in my case specifically, I have found that it's been a better lifestyle for me there.
That's cool. That's cool. Any other questions we got? Someone up? No? Cool. Thank you guys
Great,
so
thank
very
you
much.
guys.
Let's hear it for Alexandra Cross.